Reports were saying that Jacob Markstrom might be on the move. Now the Flames front office is saying that he hasn't requested a trade. What's going on and who's telling the truth? We have a lot to break down in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Scores! Oh, Stevens stepped up, nailed him. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here on Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play-by-play announcer, Devils writer for Pucks and Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. Before we get to today's agenda, how about the Stanley Cup final? There's no way that the Florida Panthers are seriously going to blow a 3-0 lead, right? Because the Edmonton Oilers won Game 5, and now this series heads back to Edmonton yet again as these two teams will duke it out Friday night. I must say, I thought Edmonton was toast, and I just thought that Game 4 was just nothing more than a gentleman's sweep. It seemed like the Panthers were playing somewhat decent in their offensive end, but they just couldn't convert it to a high amount of goals. That's just what I observed from an optic standpoint. And Connor McDavid, he was absolutely incredible. That's his second 4-point performance during the Stanley Cup final. Regardless of the outcome, he has to win the Conn Smythe Trophy, right? We'll see what happens, but I did originally say Panthers in 6, and I took my prediction back initially and said, okay, this looks like it's heading towards a sweep, and the Oilers have caught lightning in a bottle, and Game 6 is going to be a little tough for the Panthers because, once again, they're now playing in front of a hostile Edmonton crowd, and you know they're going to pack Rogers Place. I really thought the Panthers had it. I thought Matthew Tkachuk was going to follow a similar script as his buddy Jason Tatum, who just won the championship for the Boston Celtics and beat Luka and the Mavs in 5, but the hockey gods had something else in mind. If there is a script out there, bravo, well done. But focusing on the New Jersey Devils, because the offseason is about to kick into high gear, the draft is fast approaching, and we have some spicy development regarding Jacob Markstrom and his current situation with the Calgary Flames. That's what we're going to focus on in the first segment. We got some quotes from General Manager Craig Conroy about Markstrom's current situation because what he's saying to the media is conflicting initial reports saying that Markstrom wants out, the Devils seem to be one of the front runners, and I will share my thoughts on the matter. Then in the second segment, let's revisit a hypothetical Jacob Markstrom trade scenario, because if the Flames are playing hardball, if they are not trading away Markstrom, should the Devils try to pursue another avenue? Maybe they should reunite with Kaapo Kähkönen. I saw an article on Pucks and Pitchforks that I want to discuss. And speaking of Pucks and Pitchforks, I recently released an article talking about roster structure and how it's not just a goalie that's going to turn around the Devils this upcoming season. And then in the third and final segment, let's touch on preseason, because the schedule for preseason was recently published, and I want to talk about it briefly because the Devils have a preseason game before they're supposed to fly across the ocean to Czechia. But let's look at what Craig Conroy said to the media recently, and this is courtesy of Sportsnet. Regarding Jacob Markstrom, quote, "He's never come and said he wants out. That's never been mentioned. He's never said that. There's something about the goalie all the time, and I don't think it's fair for the goalie either. I feel more for him because I've been on the other side of this." Okay, that's interesting. And like I said a few minutes ago, it kind of conflicts what other reports were saying about Jacob Markstrom and his current trade scenario. Elliot Friedman recently said, quote, Calgary is trying to do this as quietly as possible. There's definitely something going on. New Jersey, Fitzgerald's on record as saying he will consider moving his 10th overall pick, and I know a lot of people are looking at in goal. The thing about Markstrom in trading for him, he's basically a 2-year, $6 million player you're trading for. If your choice is trading for a goalie, especially him with that contract, or going out and signing someone in free agency, that might be a bigger number. You're very happy to take that. I can understand why there'd be a lot of interest in Markstrom. Obviously, a lot of people are suspecting New Jersey, and there's a few teams that suspect Toronto and Ottawa as well. Kevin Woodley, who's affiliated with Sportsnet, was quoted to say, in the past couple weeks or so, people who are close to Markstrom's camp and would know, I just think the ship has sailed on that. As a matter of fact, I think the Flames know there is no intention of coming back. Obviously, they control his future, but I believe that the request has been made and he wants to play somewhere else, preferably on a team that has a chance to compete. There's a reason his name is out there, and it's not just because it was out there at the trade deadline. It's out there because I don't believe he has any intention of playing for the Calgary Flames again. All right. So you got the front office saying that Markstrom never requested a trade, and I guess they're not really searching for the time being. And then you got other reporters saying like trade discussions involving Markstrom are heating up. Seems like New Jersey's a front runner. Markstrom is not too happy with what's been going on in Calgary. And to give you some more background information, during the course of the season, Markstrom's name was always brought up in trade discussions leading up to the trade deadline. And one of the teams that were linked to Markstrom were obviously the Devils because they were in desperate need of a goalie. It wasn't working with Vitek Vanecek. It wasn't working with Akira Schmid. Nico Dawes, he was hot for a good minute, but he started to fall off. And the Devils just needed to change something ASAP. And then at the deadline, they get Jake Allen, they get Kaapo Kähkönen. But a lot of people were anticipating for them to make a splashy move and get Jacob Markstrom, John Gibson, maybe even Elvis Merzlikins, and UC Saro's name was thrown into the mix, but I didn't think that was realistic. Basically, Markstrom has just been in this hoopla of trade discussion, and reports were saying during the season that he was not too happy with the Flames front office, with how they've been dealing him in trade discussion, especially since he has a no movement clause. I read an article recently saying that Markstrom has signed off on his no movement clause to be dealt to New Jersey, and this is where I guess conflict starts to arise. Flames are saying that they want a high-end prospect and also a first-round draft pick for Markstrom, but the problem is they don't have the power in this case. Markstrom can control his fate with his no movement clause, and he has to sign off on that. Let's just say the Ottawa Senators offer a high-end prospect and also a first-round draft pick for Markstrom's services. He would have to sign off on that. And I've talked about it in past episodes. Just because you're asking for these sort of assets, it doesn't mean you're going to get it. And the best way to predict future behavior is relevant past behavior. And with all due respect, the Flames organization, they're not really going in the right direction. Let's look at some players that they've unfortunately lost the last few seasons. Matthew Tkachuk, Johnny Gaudreau, Chris Tanev, Nikita Zadorov, Tyler Toffoli. It hasn't been all sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows out in Calgary. And I think based on everything that's happened with this organization, Markstrom is a little fed up. And here's my warning to the Flames organization. Yes, you theoretically don't have to trade Markstrom, but if the reports are true and that he's growing a little frustrated with your organization, why hold on to him? Because the longer you hold on to him, the more his value dips. I'm not saying you have to take the first offer available, but you should really consider being a little more serious when it comes to trade discussions, because if he is still on the roster next month in late July, you might create a cancer within the locker room, and that might be a huge issue that nobody wants to deal with. And let's just say you hold him on for this season. Come next year, his value is going to go down even more because as his contract grows less And as his age grows older, the value goes down. And he has a no movement clause, which makes things even more difficult. And let's just say he reaches free agency and he either retires or goes to another team. Then you get nothing in return. And once again, you've been losing a lot of high caliber players the last couple seasons. Why run that sort of risk? Try to get something out of it while you still can. I don't think that relationship can be fixed. And why are these trade discussions stalled? I don't really know, but the Stanley Cup playoffs are still ongoing. This final is dragging out. It seemed like it was geared toward a sweep, similar to what I said in segment 1. But during the course of the playoffs, not much has really happened throughout the league, with the exception of Ryan McDonough heading back to Tampa, and Philip Hronek, shortly before I started recording this episode, signed a mega extension with the Vancouver Canucks. Still, I think the Flames should get back on the phone with Tom Fitzgerald or whoever and just try to work on these trade discussions, because it's going to lead you to nowhere good. Even if you still have Jacob Markstrom on your team, how far are you going to get? You're not a playoff caliber unit. That's just my outside perspective on the matter. I think the Flames, for what's best for them, they should really consider trading Markstrom within the next month or so. Get what you can still get out of him while his value is still somewhat decent, and then you can go from there. Because if you hold on to him, that's going to create friction in the locker room. And if you hold on to him for the next 2 seasons and then he walks in unrestricted free agency, you get nothing in return for a high caliber goalie who finished, second in the Vezina Trophy race not too long ago. Should the Devils still be interested in Jacob Markstrom? I'll get to that in a second. But before we continue, let me tell you about FanDuel. Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, and more, and you can bet it all on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets and a winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can bet on everything from Finals MVP to who you think is going to hit one out of the park. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summertime bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com to look at the betting odds, and please remember to gamble responsibly. Okay, I've talked about Jacob Markstrom extensively on this show the past couple weeks, and I see that some people of the Devils discourse are a little conflicted when it comes to Jacob Markstrom. He's not the best from a statistical standpoint, but he's far from worse. And if he was hypothetically added to this roster, he would be an upgrade over Kaapo Kähkönen and Jake Allen. And he still has a couple years remaining on his contract, and he's growing a little old. That means his value might not be as high compared to some of the other goalies that might be available in the market. Let's revisit this talking point. With everything that's been going on with Calgary, with all the drama that they seem to have brought upon themselves, do I think the Devils should get Jacob Markstrom? If I'm being honest with myself, is Jacob Markstrom the best goalie available? No. You would look at UC Saros or Linus Ullmark. But if we're being realistic, UC Saros, I don't see him being dealt away out of Nashville. The Predators are a playoff caliber team. They just went to the playoffs, and this is the man that replaced Pekka Rinne, who was the greatest goalie in Nashville history. And he's filled the shoes nicely, if you ask me. I don't think they want to get rid of Saros. And then for the Bruins, they're definitely going to ask for that 10th overall pick. And remember what happened over 10 years ago with Corey Schneider? I'm just putting that out there. Yes, Ullmark is a former Vezina Trophy winner, but you got to think in terms of investment. And remember, getting a goalie isn't just the only goal for Tom Fitzgerald. He wants to get a top 6 forward, a bottom 6 forward, a top 4 defenseman, and a bottom 4 defenseman. I talked about it in the previous episode, and it supposedly he wants to get those types of assets. I think he could get some, but not all, just based on how the financial situation would work for Devils. Could he get it in a trade? Could he get it in free agency? We're just going to have to wait and see. But if Fitzgerald is serious about basically getting some more assets added to this roster, high caliber assets, then you might have to go with Jacob Markstrom because you can get him at a lower price compared to the other goalies in the market and still have some room to try to make something work logistically. Because I talked about in the previous episode, the Devils don't have that many trade assets to use. And if they want to sign someone in free agency, they're going to have to clear house a little bit. And that's easier said than done. Do you let Dawson Mercer walk, or do you try to trade away Andre Palat, maybe dump his salary to a playoff caliber team? I don't think anyone's going to do that. Palat is solid, but he's not worth a cap hit of $6 million for the next 3 seasons, and he has a no movement clause. Once again, easier said than done. I found an article on Pucks and Pitchforks, which is a site that I work at, and there was a talking point saying, is Kaapo Kähkönen, is he still an option? Like, should the Devils just re-sign him at a cheaper value and then you just run it back with Jake Allen and Kähkönen come next year? That is an absolute last resort. I think Kähkönen and Allen were solid in the second half of the season for the Devils, but here's what I fear. I fear that that's just going to be Vanacek and Schmid 2.0. Remember, Vanacek did something that no Devils goalie had done since Martin Brodeur, which is amount 30-plus wins in a single season, and he fell off hard. And you could take a risk in just running it back with Kähkönen and Allen, but I just don't think that's going to win you a championship. I think they would be just fine in the regular season, but come the playoffs, that's where I'm a little stumped. I think they should try to explore any avenue they can to get Jacob Markstrom or maybe another goalie that's available on the market at a cheaper value. And I recently published an article for Pucks and Pitchforks myself, and I talked about the goalie situation once again. And I will leave a link in the description to my latest article. I talked about how Adin Hill was the starting goalie for the Knights last season, and they were the champions, obviously. And Hill has always been a solid goalie, but never got the credit he deserves, mainly because he played for the Arizona Coyotes and San Jose Sharks. With all due respect, those are two lackadaisical teams, and once he joined the Golden Knights, he was put on a much bigger stage. And let's use a good example, Florida Panthers, and they have Sergei Bobrovsky, a 2-time Vezina Trophy winner. The players in front of him were amazing as well. Matthew Tkachuk, he could someday win the Hart Trophy. Sasha Barkov, now a 2-time Selke winner. Aaron Ekblad, very underrated defenseman. Sam Reinhart, he led the team in points. Carter Verhaeghe is a solid contributor. And Vladimir Tarasenko, someone I've talked about on this show before, saying maybe the Devils should take a look at him, was a good addition at the trade deadline. And the Panthers are a well-oiled machine. Yes, that pun was intentional. My thing is, like, the Devils cannot pour their heart and soul into a goalie and expect a big turnaround. They got to fill the roster up and down. And I like that Tom Fitzgerald has that mindset saying, okay, let's look at a top 6 forward. Let's look at a bottom 6 forward. Let's look at a top 4 defenseman. Let's look at a bottom 4 defenseman. In reality, all they need is a bottom 6 forward and also a bottom 4 defenseman to fill out the roster to replace Michael McLeod and Miles Wood, and also replace someone like Ryan Graves, Damon Severson, or Colin Miller. I really hope that Tom Fitzgerald is smart when it comes to negotiating for a goalie. And I think just based on everything, the logistics, what Tom Fitzgerald has in mind, that 10th overall pick that could get him something even bigger, he should really focus on Jacob Markstrom and try to dog Markstrom out of Calgary, because I don't think Calgary is in a position where they can be greedy. They have to take with what they can get, especially since Markstrom is getting older and he has that no movement clause. And that might work into the favor of Tom Fitzgerald. All right, we're going to talk about the preseason momentarily, but before we continue, let me tell you about Policygenius. Policygenius helps you easily compare your options from America's top insurers in just a few clicks. Their award-winning agents can even walk you through the process step by step. Your work life insurance policy may not offer enough protection for your family's needs. Even worse, it may not come with you if you leave your job. Policygenius has no incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. They have thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilots from customers who found the best fit for their needs. Get peace of mind by finding the right life insurance with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com. All right, let's talk some preseason, shall we? Because the preseason schedule was recently revealed. And it will consist of 7 games with 3 games played at the Prudential Center and 4 road matchups, all with 7 p.m. Eastern, of course, start times. The club will play the New York Islanders and New York Rangers twice each, the Montreal Canadiens, Philadelphia Flyers, and Washington Capitals once apiece. Current NHL dates have rookies reporting to Devils training camp on Wednesday, September 11th, with veterans reporting the following week on September 18th. Broadcast information for the games will be announced at a later date. Excited to see Bill Spalding and Ken Danico back on television and Matt Loughlin and Chico Resch on the airwaves. I advise everyone to listen to Devils games on the radio once in a while. I think Matt and Chico do a phenomenal job breaking down the game and giving some new perspectives and insights. I know we're in a day and age where everyone has a cell phone and we're basically at a point where anyone can stream the game anywhere. I'm not going to go into detail. I think we all know what I'm implying. But I'd say that listening on the radio, it's a breath of fresh air. And honestly, it forces you to kind of use your imagination since you can't see it. I actually have enjoyed doing so. The Devils open the 2024 preseason slate with a home game on Sunday, September 22nd against the Islanders and play their final preseason contest on September 24th at Montreal. The club will host the Capitals on September 25th, followed by a road game against the Islanders on September 27th at UBS Arena. Devils will face off against Rangers for a home-and-home back-to-back September 30th at the Prudential Center and October the 1st at Madison Square Garden. The preseason closes October 3rd against the Flyers at Wells Fargo Center. All right, October 3rd. Does that date sound familiar? It should, because on October 4th, the Devils will kick off their 2024-2025 season in Czechia, which means the roster will have to be set before the conclusion of preseason, meaning that I think all AHL players will remain at Wells Fargo, whereas all the veterans and all the other young guys who made the opening night roster will be traveling across the ocean to suit up for that game against the Sabres in Czechia, which is home to Andre Palat. I must say, that's an interesting schedule choice, giving the Devils a preseason game the night before they're supposed to play in Czechia, or the morning. I don't know. The time zone is going to throw me off a little bit, but I'm looking forward to it, and we're just a few months away from Devils hockey. But in the meantime, it's still the off season, and we got a lot in store. This Jacob Markstrom news is getting spicier by the minute, and it seems like we're getting updates every single week. Let me know what you guys think. What are your thoughts on the Calgary Flames organization and how they're handling Jacob Markstrom? Do you anticipate for him to be a Devil or maybe playing for a different team? Leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on podcast streaming service, hit me up on my personal X Page app at TreyMatt4 or the show's X Page app at Locked On Devils. As today's episode, that's all the time I have for you. Continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day, New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks for listening once again.